Hello, powerful people, and welcome back to the Power at Work blog. My name is Seth Harris. I'm a senior fellow at the Burns Center for Social Change, and this is an emergency blogcast, a breaking news blogcast. I have been watching the results of the election in the Volkswagen plant in Chattanooga, and I have seen enough. The UAW is going to win the election among the workers in the Volkswagen plant. The UAW will represent the workers in the Chattanooga Volkswagen plant. It is the first Southern auto plant to have an election where the union has been successful. I think it's been 40 or 50 years since the last election where an auto plant voted for the union. So this is a very, very important event. Right now, the results of the election suggest that the union is going to win overwhelmingly. It's going to be a 3-1 election margin. That is shocking. Those are the kinds of numbers we have been seeing on college campuses, but that we have not been seeing in a lot of other elections, except where the employer essentially endorses the members joining the union. So I wanted to take an opportunity. First of all, we should note this extremely important event, but I think we should also talk about what it means and what it doesn't mean. There's been a lot of talk about what this election means, what it signals, what it says about the labor movement, what it says about the UAW, what it says about workers in the South. So I wanted to offer my analysis. I think it'll be helpful to the conversation going forward. I think there are some very, very, very good things to say about this election victory. And I think there are some comments that people are making that are a little bit overstated, or at least a little premature. And I think we want to talk about those as well. So this emergency blogcast is all about helping you to understand what the meaning of this Volkswagen UAW victory is. And so let's talk about it a little bit. So let's start with the most obvious thing, and that is it's always an extraordinary thing in America when a union wins an election. It's an even more extraordinary thing when a union wins an election in the South, because as you know, that both the culture and the politics of the South quite rabidly anti-union. Tennessee is a right-to-work state, like all of the states in the South. In this case, you even had 6 Southern governors putting out a statement, 6 Republican governors in the South, putting out a statement opposing the UAW, calling it a special interest group. And so the workers in this Volkswagen plant had to show a tremendous amount of courage in an environment that was not a pro-union environment, and really voting in what is their best interest, voting for their futures, voting for their families, showing tremendous resilience. So that's the first thing that you have to acknowledge is the courage of these workers should, I think, be championed, and they should be held up as models for workers all across the United States. They won. They won in decisive fashion. They won it even in the face of very strong political opposition from outside the company in Tennessee and beyond in the South. So that's very important. And it is extremely important that these workers now have a union. Just in and of itself, there are 4,300 workers who are eligible to vote in this election, about that. 4,300 workers. Those 4,300 workers are now going to have a union. And it looks very much like Volkswagen will bargain with that union. And so those workers will very likely get a collective bargaining agreement. And it means that very likely their wages are going to go up. Their benefits will be better. Some of the musculoskeletal disorders they're suffering because some of the work they are doing is designed in an unsafe way will be addressed. They will have a voice in their workplace. They will have a union grievance procedure in their workplace. They will have anti-discrimination protections in their workplace, all made possible by their courageous vote tonight and over the last 3 days for the UAW. an extraordinary accomplishment for these workers, and an accomplishment that I think will last and will be genuinely meaningful for them and for their families. It's also going to be deeply meaningful for the people of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and for Tennessee more generally. There is now going to be a powerful voice for workers, for progress, for consideration of issues like poverty, issues like economic fairness, economic justice, justice in the world more broadly, in Tennessee with a powerful megaphone. The UAW is a very effective organization and a big voice on politics. And now Chattanooga, Tennessee will have a large UAW local to join with the other unions in Chattanooga. It will give immense support to a progressive infrastructure to the extent there is one in Chattanooga. It will give tremendous support to other unions in the Chattanooga area who, let me just say, probably have felt under assault for decades, almost certainly have felt under assault for decades, like trade unionists all across the South of the United States. And now the reinforcements are on the way. And so the Central Labor Council, the State Federation of Labor, all of those kinds of organizations, and movement politics, the civil rights movement, the LGBTQ movement, the movement for equality for women, all of those are going to get a lift because there's going to be a voice for workers and a voice for progress in their community. You can't underestimate, let me just say, you can't overstate, that's what I meant to say, you can't overstate how important that is going to be for the people of Chattanooga and for the people of Tennessee, as well as for the workers in that plant and for their families. It's going to, the benefits of being a union member extends to family, it extends to extended family, but it also extends into the community and beyond. It means a tremendous amount to the UAW. The UAW launched a strike against the big three. It's the first time they struck the big three U.S. automakers, Ford, Stellantis, and GM. At the same time, they did it in a very sophisticated way, the stand-up strike. It was a very smart strike. And they got historic contracts as a consequence of that strike. The strategy worked. The collective bargaining worked. The members of the UAW benefited immensely from that result. Higher wages, better benefits, more money for pensions, a quicker path for workers to getting full benefits rather than being treated as second-class citizens. You all are familiar with what happened in the contract. It was a very, very, very big deal. This success in Chattanooga at the Volkswagen was in part by of that strike. There's been a lot of reporting, a lot of interviews with a lot of workers in Chattanooga telling us that those workers watched that strike very closely and they said, why not us? Not that they want to strike, but they want to get the benefits of that strike. They want to get the benefits in a collective bargaining agreement of there having been a strike. The better wages, the better working conditions, the better pensions, the better safety and health, not being treated as second-class citizens in their own workplace. The Volkswagen workers saw what happened, and all indications are that they voted to say to the UAW, we want what they've got. We want what the Stellantis workers got, what the GM workers got, what the Ford workers got. And that's immensely important. That's extremely important. It shows that winning begets winning. Success begets success. And organizing can succeed, particularly when you're coming off a tremendously successful organizing effort and organizing of a strike and a bargaining effort by the union. That's extremely important. Now I want to put a little bit of a damper, or at least maybe a caveat or two on what we're seeing here. even though let's be honest, this is extraordinarily good news for working people, for worker power, for the union movement, for the UAW, for the workers in Chattanooga, their families, their community, the progressive cause more broadly, for economic justice, for raising people's wages, all of those things. And nothing I'm going to say is going to take anything away from any of that. It was not a surprise that the Volkswagen plant was the first plant in which the UAW's effort to organize non-union auto facilities in the United States began. Right, so the UAW now has a $40 million a year organizing effort aimed at the 13 automakers in the United States, some American, many, many, many foreign, who are not union, who are not UAW in the United States. They may have unions overseas. In fact, Volkswagen, every facility in the world, except for the American facility, and I think they have Chinese facilities that are also not union, or they're not real unions. Every other facility in the world that Volkswagen is organized has a union, except for the Chattanooga facility. That's now going to end. But it's not a surprise that Volkswagen went first, and here's why. And there are several reasons. Number one, the UAW is organized at this Volkswagen facility before. There was an organizing effort in 2014. There was an election. The UAW narrowly lost that election. There was an organizing effort in 2019. The UAW also narrowly lost that election. There was also an election in a smaller unit of this plant where the union won the election, but because there was a challenge by Volkswagen, Volkswagen did not want a smaller unit, and so they challenged it and they fought it, and those workers did not end up with a union. So there is a history in this workplace, and there are very likely, even though there's been some turnover and the size of the workforce has grown fairly dramatically at the Chattanooga facility, there were workers who fought this fight before, who've experienced this battle before. And they were able to help explain to others what they were in for, what they should expect. There was probably an organizing infrastructure. They may have still been members of the organizing committee available, or at least people who are familiar with the organizing effort. There were relationships in the city that the UAW had built. So that history, that effort, that past effort, which was thwarted for a whole bunch of reasons, and we don't have to go into what those reasons were, almost certainly helped the UAW with this organizing effort. That's one. Number two, Volkswagen is not a rabidly anti-union company. Now, they sometimes act like one, at least here in the United States. In 2014, they were essentially neutral in the organizing drive. In 2019, they took a very different position, advised by a law firm that is known to a lot of people for being quite rabidly anti-union. And so the Volkswagen opposed the union in 2019. This time, even though, some supervisors apparently were opposing the union, some were campaigning against the union, there was not an all-out corporate anti-union, union avoidance, union busting effort in the style of what we had seen until recently with Starbucks and with some other companies. Actually, frankly, what is the norm in union organizing in the United States? Volkswagen did not launch that kind of an aggressively anti-union effort. There are a lot of reasons for that. One of them is that the German unions are very powerful within Volkswagen. There's also something called a Works Council, which is a statutory enterprise inside Volkswagen that plays a big role in employee relations and labor relations issues. They have a big voice. By the way, the Works Council in Volkswagen is overwhelmingly dominated by the union that represents these workers. And those two entities not only have a voice in the workplace, they have a voice on the supervisory board, which is the board of directors of Volkswagen, along with some government officials. So in order for Volkswagen to get anything done, they need to have the cooperation of their union. So that probably I don't know this from inside knowledge, but that probably tempered the way Volkswagen acted. Also, there was legal action taken in Germany, the accusations against Volkswagen violating German law in the way it treats workers in its supply chain. I don't think that litigation actually came to a conclusion, but those kinds of challenges are meaningful. And maybe Volkswagen just saw the writing on the wall. Maybe they could count, and they knew that they were not going to win if they opposed the union. And so they basically, in an effort to keep good relations in the workplace, decided discretion was the better part of valor, and they were going to let things move forward. Not saying they loved it. I'm not saying that there wasn't opposition from American leadership of Volkswagen. I'm not saying any of that. I'm not saying the supervisors weren't saying things they shouldn't have said, and that didn't look like what was going on in a lot of other workplaces. But you didn't have that ferocious internal effort to, with relentless captive audience meetings and one-on-one meetings and all the kinds of tactics that anti-union companies use to avoid union organizing in their workplace. A third point is that in 2014, there was an extremely aggressive effort by a couple of right-wing organizations paired up, working closely with Republican elected officials in Tennessee to oppose the union. Because Volkswagen was not opposing the union, these right-wingers took it upon themselves, and they spent a huge amount of money, and they campaigned aggressively among the workers. Let's also remember that 2014 and 2019, times were different. The view of the American people towards unions, the view of workers towards unions was very, very different. The UAW was going through a lot of very serious challenges of its own, corruption cases, democracy issues. And so all of those things conspired to make it much more difficult in 2014, 2019 for the union to win. Now, unions are seen very, very favorably. A number of unions, including the UAW, have won huge strikes and tremendous benefits in their collective bargaining relationships as a consequence of that. I saw one news report where a worker pointed to the success of the Writers Guild in Hollywood as an illustration of the kind of success that unions are able to have. Unions are winning, and again, winning begets winning. So there are a lot of factors here that made Volkswagen a good choice for the UAW to go first. Now, that doesn't mean that Volkswagen is a unicorn. That doesn't mean that this victory can't be replicated in other places. There are some people saying, oh, this is the beginning. It's all dominoes from here. We knocked the first domino down. Everybody else is going to organize. Everybody else is going to organize. That might come true. I would love to see that come true, but it's a little premature from this victory in Chattanooga to conclude that the UAW is now going to march through the South like Sherman, winning every union election in every facility. They're going to come up against employers who are rabidly anti-union. They're going to come up against communities where there is extraordinary cultural opposition to unions. They are going to come up against infrastructures designed to undermine union organizing. And in some of these plants, they've never had to organize, or they've never tried to organize before. There are other facilities in the South where the UAW has tried to organize. And we're going to have to see whether or not that makes it more likely that they are going to win. I think it does make it more likely that they will win in those facilities. Doesn't mean they will win, but I think it makes it more likely that they will win. But the UAW has its work cut out for it. Now, again, winning begets winning, and so winning this first one really, really matters. Really, really matters. And the next vote will be held at a Mercedes plant in Alabama. It'll be held in the middle of May, so about 4 weeks from now. I'm recording this at 10:33 p.m. on April 19th, Friday, April 19th. So almost a month from now, maybe 3 weeks from now, we'll see that next union election, or UAW election at least, in a Mercedes plant in Alabama. Mercedes doesn't have some of the limitations that Volkswagen does. Mercedes is going to, I think, trust will ferociously oppose the UAW. It's going to be a very big fight. I'm not in any way suggesting that Alabama is more anti-union than Tennessee. They're all really anti-union. All those states are rabidly anti-union. For goodness sakes, the governor of Tennessee campaigned in 2019 in the facility and campaigned outside the facility this time against the union. The governor of Alabama has expressed her vigorous opposition to the union and urged the workers in the Mercedes plant to vote no, to vote against the UAW. So there's a lot more fighting to go. Now, is the UAW better off and are auto workers better off today than they were 3 days ago? You bet they are. They're beginning to build some momentum, and this is a historic victory, an extremely important victory. But we want to be a little bit temperate, a little bit sober in making big predictions about what is going to happen as a consequence of this victory. There's a lot of fighting left to be done. The UAW has shown itself to be a fighting union, and they are obviously ready to take this fight on. And let me just say, I don't think that one loss is going to in any way deter them. And I'm not predicting that they're going to lose anywhere. They may not lose anywhere. That would be a really good outcome. But I don't think they're going to stop fighting. I think they understand how critically important it is to the future of the union, the future of auto workers, the future of the American auto industry, and particularly an auto industry that is transitioning to electric vehicles, where a lot of the electric vehicle work, particularly the electric vehicle battery manufacturing, is going to happen in the South. And so the UAW needs to show they can win in the South. They need to send a message to employers: we can win, even though you chose to go to a right-to-work state to avoid unions. We are going to follow you there, and we are going to win these elections. That's one of the important things about this UAW election. They've shown they can win in the South now. But they get that this is extremely important. We should all get that this is extremely important. But let's not allow that to cause us to in any way conclude that this is a conclusion. This is the end of the first chapter. And man, it was a great first chapter. It's terrific. But there's a lot more fight to be had. There are a lot more battles to be won. And so the UAW is going to need a lot of help. They're going to need a lot of support. They're going to need a lot of encouragement. They're going to need a lot of folks calling out the companies when the companies try to bust these unions and avoid unions in their workplaces. They're going to need people to call out the right-wing politicians who are trying to block the union from organizing. They need to call out the right-wingers in the business community and in the right-wing advocacy world who are trying to take this choice out of the hands of the workers. The workers need to choose. This needs to be the workers' decision about what to do. So those of us who are not UAW organizers still have an important role to play in supporting this broader effort, because the fight is just beginning. But let me just say, a very exciting night. And I, as you could tell, I couldn't wait to talk to you about it. My guess is you're probably not going to be watching this on the Friday night after the election. You'll see lots of other content about what happened with the UAW. I wanted to give you my take on it as well over the weekend. So thanks a lot for tuning in to see this emergency blogcast about the UAW victory, the worker victory in the Chattanooga Volkswagen plant. Thanks for joining us. We will see you back here on the blog again very soon.